recorded. There we go.
All right, are you all able to see it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I just learned I have a person starting at the end of January. They have to ramp up, and it'll probably take them a month at least, but we could also have that person, if there's any like starter tasks or good ramping up tasks, that's something we can also add.
Yeah, in terms of ramping up, I think we have a GitHub label, help wanted or something like that. I could make sure we have a number of our issues tagged appropriately for things that like would be nice starting points for people ramping up. So that's one of the ideas in case you want to, you know, give them some issues. Using the label would be nice.
Yeah, I think that's a good plan. It'd probably be good for them to go through the process that we have anyone ramp up on. So yeah, that's probably a good way to start, is just have them experiment with how well that label actually works. All right, so does it make sense for me to just go ahead and walk through these items? Do we say that's the best?
Yeah, works for me.
All right. So yeah, just to recap, the items are kind of grouped thematically about what the broader objective are for a set of items. The first one listed here is around user education and essentially getting not developing features or not fixing bugs, but getting folks comfortable with what's already there. So the first part is around just documentation. I have an item here listed as just getting the commands logically grouped on how we want them. And I've been thinking about this more since we first discussed it, and refining division. I think this is a pretty small task, actually. More extensive examples and productivity hacks. One thing I've seen on issues is a request for a feature that is like, I wish kube control could do this, and then we get either it approved or halfway through implementation, and someone who's just a really good hacker on kube control says, oh, did you know you can combine these two flags and pipe it to this other command, and then you get that same feature. And these are things I wasn't even aware of or hadn't considered. So having someone who's familiar with all those hacks, or maybe just collectively sharing some of our productivity things we do and documenting them, might be a way to get them into people's hands. Document commands that are undocumented currently. I'll add this to Q1. When I was putting together the reference documentation, I realized that some commands just don't even have a single line of documentation around them or what they do. I'll address some of these comments too. It looks like, cool. Okay, so provide a holistic walkthrough of the tool and major functions. This is mainly derived, I was thinking documentation more in the form of like tutorial focused and less reference focused, where assuming a user comes to kube control without any knowledge about what the tool does or how to manage your configs. We have some documentation around this on the website already, but I think as the tool has kind of evolved and our vision of it has evolved, maybe we want to restructure and refactor it, especially with the apply stuff. Since that didn't exist originally in the first iteration of kube control, the onboarding documentation doesn't do a great job of essentially taking that into account and explaining the differences. Some of that's stuck in developer docs. I think this is really just like reevaluating kind of all how we introduce users to the tool. And then, yeah, something about linking to online docs. We need to think more about how that might be done if we do it. I'll try and stick to just the top level stuff in the comments. Well-documented trade-offs when multiple approaches to solving a problem. This stuff here is like, how can users factor their config, right? Do they store them in GitHub? Do they store them locally? Do they just copy and paste the same thing over and over again, or do they use like JSONnet to try and use inheritance, which Box is used well, but there's a lot of disadvantages to it. We went down this road internally with something at Google using an inheritance-based approach, and it turns out to be really unmaintainable after a bit. Do we use GitHub and branching and use that to track diversions? So I think that's an example of just like factoring config and how there's 3 options right there about how you may want to factor your configs. And if you think about like directory structure versus like test versus prod as directory structure stuff, like just I think talking through the tools people have used to become successful so that when a new DevOps team decides that they're going to use Kubernetes and now they need a way of managing their configs, they actually have prior art to reference.
Yeah, in terms of in the team of user onboarding and things like that, it's related to the provide holistic walkthrough item, but I see that not only as a point in terms of documentation, but also probably inline walkthrough, right? Because sometimes I feel like kubectl is always related to context, right? When you are using kubectl, you are in a namespace in a given server with a given session. So everything you run on kubectl is always related to a context. And I feel that sometimes we don't do a great job, for people to understand exactly where they are at some point and where they can go next. Right. So for me, when I'm running a number of kubectl commands, sometimes I get lost. Where exactly I am in this given namespace. And if I'm a new user, I just did my first kubectl run or my first kubectl create. Okay, that went well. So where do I go next? So I see that topic specifically also as an inline issue where we could, have some hinting in terms of, where you can go next after doing create, something like that. Especially because kubectl is capable of knowing if you're a new user, right? Because if you are just starting, kubectl creates the kubeconfig files for you so that we know it's the first time you are actually doing something in kubectl. So we could think about some inline hinting or something like that. Not sure if you guys agree, but
yeah, I'm going to try and capture that here. Inline user friendly.
Yeah, I think there is already an issue about the kube control structure's next command. I think I will find that out if we did want this.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you're right, Tony. And there's probably some variations on this, like starting from, do we want an inline tutorial that walks you through how to use the tool, or do we want just better messaging and output about what's going on, or do we want better error messaging? Like there's an issue about if kube control isn't configured to talk to a cluster, it just says like it can't talk to localhost essentially, which is very confusing because it's like it was never configured. That sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Okay.
Tutorials, next command, context, and right, great. And yeah, as I go through this, just think about, I guess the plan is going to be like, why don't you just note any that you think are important for Q1, or maybe like we can each rank our top 3 at the end. And then that way, after I go through all these, we can just quickly kind of figure out which ones we want to nail for 1.6. All right, so theme, engineering velocity. This is essentially technical debt, but also includes stuff that maybe isn't like technical debt, but just things we could do to make us faster and more effective. Aaron. No, this would be enough. I think what we're talking about is that as you run kube control, you can like write kube control help can give you commands to run, right? Like this is how you run Nginx, right? And then give you like the next set of commands, right? With control. Velocity. Yeah, so one of the things I think is great. There's a proposal about this. I think a lot of this stuff is just deciding what we want to do. I mean, within the whole set of requirements or whole set of goals, I think a broader meta theme here is like not necessarily fixing anything or adding anything, but just deciding what we want people to do. Because there's a couple ways of solving a lot of problems. So yeah, distributing multiple tools. We're developing a set of client tools, kubeadmin, kubecontrol. There's a federation client tool. I think this list is just going to grow, linearly over the set of releases. So we need to figure out a packaging mechanism, and that may include stuff like how do we package and allow users to install tools that may not be distributed with core but are considered tied to the project very closely, such as Helm or Compose or that sort of thing. Moving kube control out of the main repo. This one I think is really important from the perspective that it's going to allow us a lot more control over how we develop the product, but it's a lot of work. I'm doing some research on Git submodules right now on subtrees, which I don't know that much about, but might be able to help us. Or not 1.6 though. It's a lot of work. Okay, common client libraries factored out. Client tools for shared infrastructure. So this could be a couple different things. Ideas I was thinking here include, so one is flags. I know this seems like kind of a silly thing, but just like having the set of flags that we think might be common for tooling factored out so you can just inherit them might be an interesting idea that way. As you switch between tools, the dry run flag is always consistent. And it's like always dry dash run, not like no dash or something like that, right? That one's like seems really minor and easy to do, but might be helpful for folks getting started. Another is like we have infrastructure built up around like visiting all the files. For instance, as we, if you do a directory, apply on a directory or something like that, we have infrastructure around just how you visit config files, how you parse them. We have libraries set up around authorization and authentication config stuff. We're probably going to have some stuff set up around preferences and preference files. So I imagine kind of what I'd like to see is if we develop clients like kubeadmin and the federation stuff, that the way that you manage preferences for those guys is the same to the extent possible. Same syntax, maybe even like same directory and just a different dot preferences file or like kubeadmin.preferences or something like that.
Yeah, I was thinking even something related to validations, because we currently don't even have that inside kubectl, right? Because every command does, for example, flags and arguments validation a different way. So validation should also be a target. We could start by having something inside kubectl, some library that validates like mutually exclusive flags, require arguments, things like that. and make the actual validation and also error messages consistent, and then we extract that as the library.
That's a good idea. That actually brings to mind something else. Validations. Is like going back to the theme of just documenting how we recommend people do things. Even within kubectl itself, we have this notion of subcommands versus top-level commands. And you can either create a subcommand, or you can create from a top-level command, or you can add a flag to a top-level command to get the same thing, right? Which is to control behavior of that command. I've seen an example of this where we do the same thing two different ways is we have kubectl run, and then -- like generator, which allows you to do like job versus deployment versus pod or something else. And then each one of those has their own set of mutually exclusive flags. That's how I was thinking of this, is where you can only use job flags if you're using the job generator, that sort of thing. And then you have kubectl create job, kubectl create deployment, which allows subcommands instead of flags to control them. And then now you actually don't have that mutually exclusive thing, and all the flags become much more discoverable because you know what all the job flags are when you do kubectl help create job or whatever it is. So again, just having better guidance around when you use subcommands versus adding flags. Cool. Tony, that's cool that this is something for Q1. I think this would actually be really helpful and powerful. Updating the roadmap, yeah. Oh my gosh, GitHub. How do we do this stuff? There's also projects. GitHub has like projects for managing these things. Do we want to move the roadmap, some of the stuff into a project, GitHub project, which allows you to like mark items off automatically, but doesn't allow you to do cross repo tracking. That's probably.
They added cross repo tracking like a couple months ago. If we wanted to use it.
Really?
Yeah, we've been using it for a few projects. It works pretty decently.
Thank you. Oh man, that was something I just have been wishing for every morning when I wake up. So that's awesome. Okay.
Yeah, Santa came early this year.
Apparently a couple months ago, and I just didn't realize it. Oh, great. Thanks, Aaron. That's huge. I have some work to do later today. Okay, moving on to application lifecycle management. So this is actually probably the more feature-rich piece. So kubectl does a number of different things that are in its wheelhouse. It sets up configuration stuff for you. It has some cluster management tasks. But this is what I think of as its like core competency and what folks are using it most of the time, which is if you view the Kubernetes cluster as the primary purpose is to run applications of some sort, where applications is some workload or some process running somewhere. And so this is about using kubectl to really manage that on Kubernetes. And I think part of this, so the first item I have here is actually not about kubectl itself, but like how does kubectl fit in with the other tools that are needed, right? Because we can all use kubectl to go launch a deployment on Kubernetes, but that's typically not sufficient to run an organization. You need like CI/CD, possibly, right? Some folks do that. You need a DevOps team that is managing this. So I think some of the things here are, if you're using kubectl to, like kubectl with a config-based mode, how do you initialize those configs, right? Do you just write them from the ground up? I know like internally at Google, the way we initialize configs typically is we go find someone who solved the problem before. Like if I have a Java app, I find someone who's written a config for a Java app, I copy and paste the whole thing into my directory, half of the stuff I don't understand what it does, so I just leave it there, and then, bang on it with a hammer enough to make it work. That's probably more true in a JSONet world where you have inheritance and things are a lot more complicated than with it is with flat configs. But I still think we could do a better job of saying how to do this. And one way you can even do it is kube control dash create deployment dash def image dash replica count, and then do dash dry run and dash o YAML, pipe it to a file, and that actually creates the config for you. And it's not perfect because it defaults some fields that you might not want defaulted in the config, but it does a pretty good job and it's actually pretty cool. And I'm not sure if we tell people that that's even an option. This is a big task for me, I think, and it's mainly more strategic. Looking forward to figure out what areas is kube control, what areas does it fit well with the other tooling available, and what areas does it not fit well, and we need to change a little bit.
Yeah, I definitely agree about being a big task, and even for Q1. What kind of methodology could we use in terms of understanding from our customers? Because I'm not sure if you guys at Google have a established methodology. I already saw Cube doing a few times some kind of polls with users, but would that be something like that, or do you have anything else in mind?
Oh, fantastic question. I mean, this is something I'm trying to figure out. Like, naively, what I'd like to do is see if I can sit down with some of a diverse set of customers. I'm thinking between 3 and 5 over the quarter for days with their DevOps team. And I don't know how much I get to really look at their code, right? Because, it's all private. But to the extent possible, I'd like to sit down and actually watch Box do a push. You know what I mean? And I'd like to have someone walk me through this is how the code gets checked in, and this is how the cluster gets updated, and here's all the steps in between. And then just take notes on that and try and see the pain points and document that sort of stuff. Yeah. I don't know, do you have any other ideas?
Yeah, no, that's absolutely nice. Yeah, it would be awesome if we could do that with a number of customers. We here in OpenShift, a couple months ago, we did something similar with some customers in Europe, but it was much more focused on our web dashboard. But it would be something similar for the CLI, and if we could, understand the process for a company like that, yeah, that would be awesome.
Cool. I'd love to know, offline, I'd love to talk to you just about how valuable you found that. Maybe to the extent possible, I can take your learnings from how to run that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I need to come up with a plan, but I need to at least have a plan in Q1. This is really not well defined right now, even how to go about approaching this problem. The rest of this stuff, there's a lot of stuff in here. I skipped a couple things, but kube control apply. We know it's broken in just certain ways. We have a list of issues. Part of app lifecycle management is making sure that the tools work and do what they're supposed to do. And then the config factoring, I think I talked a little bit about that earlier. I'd like to do some research here as part of that first thing, about how people are doing that. The command-based management, I think of this, there's kind of 3 ways I think of kube control managing apps. There's command-based, that's the create, set, view, run, expose set of commands. Then there's the config-based imperative commands, which is create, delete, update, or replace on config files, and then the apply. And I think the imperative config works pretty well. We don't have too many issues with it because it's pretty straightforward and uses the API pretty much directly. But the apply and the set ones are all appliance head logic. Client version skew retains correct behavior. Wow, Tony, Q1?
Yeah, I think that sounds good to me.
Okay. I don't know. You probably have a better idea of how much work this is than I do. I think there's a couple pieces to this. So one is the simpler pieces, I'd say. Hard, but at least well understood what is needed, which is the not having the compiled in Go types. I think that's going to require actually API changes, because right now we get a bunch of data from the compiled in Go types from the struct tags, is how the merge keys and that sort of stuff, right? And they have to add that to the Open API spec as extensions, or we would.
Yeah, I did understand this.
I can talk you through some. I have some idea on how to do some of that stuff, but probably Mehdi, this person will have to talk to. The other piece is going to be stuff that just breaks. I don't know why we keep seeing this, but there's some legacy logic that's just baked into assumptions about how stuff works in the server. One of these that's going to break again for 1.6 is the garbage collection. Every time we add garbage collection or reaping of children, for some reason it breaks the client-side garbage collection. So that sort of stuff's I think going to take just a few quarters as we work it out. And the only long-term solution there is moving stuff out of what's run in the client and into something run that's tied to the server version. And third-party resources and federated API resources. Okay, this is another one that's going to be maybe a bit of work, just because again those struct tags don't exist anywhere. We can do it possibly as an annotation on the third-party resource or something about how to merge fields.
Actually, I'm not sure we can complete this on Q1.
Yeah.
Since there are many outstanding capabilities of third-party resource, and I have talked with David that we may want to first update third-party resource implementation, and then we can focus some critical issues after that.
Okay, that makes sense. I just removed it. I think between that and the one that the version skew, I think we could only do one of those. They're both pretty meaty tasks. All right, extension support. This goes, let's see. Sorry, just one sec.
Sorry, just want to make sure. Did you pack book carrier?
All right. I think we kind of covered this in the last thing. I think this is, so generally we know that some things are broken with apply and the extension resource types. We probably want to do something a little more exhaustive in terms of making sure that those work once we fix the known issues. Okay, Tony. Yeah, I think this might be a stretch for Q1. We don't have an approved design for this yet. I know Clayton has a design. Sorry, I was talking about the kube control supports extension points to add additional commands. These should support extending subcommands to work with third-party resources and federated API resources. This might be a stretch. No, Aaron, I don't think so. I mean, it works out of the box. I think federated API is pretty new yet. But Fabiano, you'd know better because Red Hat has a lot more hands-on experience with that than I do.
Yeah, but as far as I know, not yet.
Can either of you guys point me to an issue for that, if there is one?
Just for federated API resources?
Specifically for the discovery.
I have pasted the link here. I just some comment.
Are you talking about the in the proposal comment, Tony?
Yeah. Not this one. I think not this one.
Yes.
Okay, I was in that.
Yeah, so in Tony's comment, there's a proposal about the kube control extension piece. That's not targeted at the federated API resources. It looks like both those comments are targeted just at the general extensions. I'm not aware of any issues about kube control working with federated API resources.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I personally, the way I see extension supports for Q1 is that I believe we should come up with approved designs for everything we want to support it as an extension. So first resources and federated resources and new subcommands like in the proof of concept I did. So for me, if we can close on a design for all of those on Q1, that would be good enough because, it's been in discussions for quite some time already. And so we should focus on at least close on the proposal. And then the actual implementation actually happen after Q1 probably.
Yeah, I think that's more realistic. Unless we're getting an army of fully ramped up engineers. Okay, and then the last item I have here is about this idea of being able to, a notion of exposing applications as kind of first-party entities and grouping multiple deployments maybe into an application and being able to interact with them in that context. So for instance, if you have like a Redis master and the Redis nodes, and you can do a kube control git apps, and it would show you that as one application composed of multiple controllers, that sort of thing. And that this would extend to the UI, and so you have kind of this native feel across both. And this has to do with extensions because third-party resources so like for Cassandra, for instance, I think you could create a third-party resource that then has a controller that uses multiple different other controllers, like deployments, kind of like I described Redis, and you'd want to be able to expose that. Okay, almost done. Kube control as a platform. This goes back to kind of some of the engineering velocity pieces, but is essentially, this is thematically, we've talked about user education, engineering velocity, and managing the applications, extending it, the cluster itself. And this goes to kind of what are like the infrastructure kube control provides. That's not business logic for specific commands. How do we support that?
In terms of removing the dependency of Cobra, I have a couple requests or issues from some external contributors that I'm shepherding. They're both stale, probably. I didn't hear from them for a few weeks, but there is some work started in that sense already. So removing dependency of Cobra and making the actual command execution separate from the actual commander Cobra. I'll have to take a look at those PRs again, see if they were able to do any progress on that. But anyway, it somehow started already.
Okay, excellent. Reduce kube control logic and moving it into the server. This is pretty, oh good, there's a tracking issue. We should, I guess, marking it as Q1 means we want to do something here. It's not, I guess we can leave it kind of flexible, which items, and are we planning on having, Tony, is this something you're planning on driving yourself, and do you have kind of a concrete vision about what sub-items you'd like to see completed?
Yeah, I think this is a quite large one, so I might get some small piece done in code 1, like move printers to server side. I think I will get that done on the first quarter of.
Okay, let's start. Is there a design doc for that, or have we already discussed how we're going to do that? I can't remember.
Yeah, we already have one.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, after the meeting, maybe go up and just clarify like what specific issues just on the doc by adding printers and the linked issue design. Technical debt, yay, Fabio. Actually making our issues meaningful. That sounds wonderful. Stabilize, what does stabilize kube control apply? Does that go back to that lifecycle management about?
Yeah, absolutely. If you want to remove it from tech debt, that's okay.
I'll just add C issue, C section, and lifecycle. Stabilize and improve printing and describing framework. Okay, Tony, is this moving it to the server side piece?
No, I added that one. It's related to umbrella issue I had. So there are a large number of printing and describers issues. So I added there in the sense of, well, we should probably try to fix some of them because there are just too many of them. On the other hand, I'm not sure about the work from moving printers to the server side, if the actual code base would be reused entirely. So I'm not sure if that plays well with the work of moving things to the server side. But anyway, it's a huge tech debt. There are just too many issues related to printers and stuff.
This is amazing, this umbrella issue. I think I'm just going to give this to the person starting and just say, eat through these. Because it looks like a great list of things that are relatively simple.
Yeah, absolutely. There are some really minor ones. There are some that require decisions, like things like we not being completely compatible with YAML 1.2. We take some pieces from YAML 1.1. So there are some things that require decisions. But on the other hand, there are a bunch of issues that are really minor stuff, minor fixes to do.
Okay. Yeah. That seems like a good starting point. Just getting the number down will allow us to focus. Like even if they're like simple fixes that aren't hugely impactful, it gets rid of the noise.
Yeah, absolutely. I added Q1 to that topic exactly in that sense. I would like for Q1 to see that number go down at least a little bit, or at least we could keep the pace of not having a lot of stuff still being added and, not come to the end of Q1 and have like 1,000 of them. So we should at least try to improve a little bit that number.
Okay. Great. So we've gone through the full list. We have a number of different items marked. I guess the second piece of this is like, how firm do we want to make these commitments? Are these just ambitions or like things we'd like to work on? And we'll get some of these done, but not all of them? Or are these like, at the end of the quarter, we fully expect everything that says Q1 to be able to be crossed off this list, or at least some section of it?
Well, I think for some of them, at least, it's worth that we start and probably continue for a good part of the year, right? For example, the item about understanding the processes from our customers. So I see that as an ongoing work probably. So I'm not sure if we will be able to come up with a closed, document by the end of Q1 anyway. But it would be nice if we could at least start that, at least with one or two customers, something like that, to at least, have, by the end of Q1, have a better understanding about that topic.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yes, I agree. I agree with what you said. And I guess just a point of clarification is, I suspect that kind of with what we've called out on here, some of these items we won't even like start on Q1. It's kind of my gut feeling. It just seems like there's a lot of stuff, which might be fine. And maybe these are like, some of these items are the things that we say, if we get new community members, we'll stick them on these, right? Like especially the create view commands, that seems like a really straightforward one. Maybe we should just call out, like, of the items that we have marked as Q1, which ones are we going to say, like, we fully intend to have at least started this and made progress on it in Q1 versus these are things we're going to tell other people to focus on?
Yeah, personally, I feel okay with pretty much all we marked as Q1, except probably third-party resources stuff. I'm not sure, and especially federated API resources. I'm not sure if we will be ready to move, anything in terms of those in Q1. But apart that, I think it's mostly okay.
Okay.
I'm not sure if you guys agree, but that's how, that's how I feel it.
Yeah, I think, oh, sorry, go ahead, Tony.
Yeah, I think for third-party resource, we may not focus on kube control on the first quarter. We may first add some server-side implementation, and then we can go on with kube control support of third-party resource. So generally, I think we will not start with adding kube control side support for third-party resource.
That sounds good to me. So I'm just going to mark both of those two. That's a really good point, Fabio. And I hadn't realized, I think that's what I was thinking, but those two are potentially a lot of work. But if we just start them and start scoping the work and deciding what needs to be done, that's probably a good goal for Q1. And then we can revisit them in 1.7 or Q2.
Yeah.
Cool. So I can, if we're happy with the items that are marked off here, I can, either me or one of you guys can just pull them out and put them in a either a spreadsheet or another document that we can share with the community.
Yeah, absolutely. I can do that. Philip, I think you're already on PTO, right? But I can still do that before the end of this week and send to you guys. I mostly feel good about the list. Let's put it on a spreadsheet and give a different look at it. But overall, I think it's looking good.
Fantastic. Yeah, I'm feeling really good about it too. Cool. Okay. And then, Aaron, one last thing. Is there anything on here, or what's your plan for Q1? Were you planning on working on any of these items? Would you like us to involve you in anything specifically?
I can't really commit to any work right now, but I am going to be coming to these stand-ups every week starting in 2017. And
Okay.
hopefully I'll have a better picture then that we can.
Is there something specifically you'd like to get out of the stand-up?
I'm coming to this from the TPR world. I want to see where I can pitch in on getting TPRs better represented in kubectl at this point. But this doc has illuminated a lot of other stuff that I need to gather my thoughts on, and I'll hop into the Slack room and dump my thoughts, I guess.
Awesome.
Cool.
Okay, cool. So then, yeah, presumably since Tony was looking at the TPR. No, wait, never mind. Did that get striked? No, it's here. Ensure apply works with TPR and federated API resource. Yeah, since you guys will probably talk about that at some point, I assume.
Yeah. I've started, since this doc has a lot of federated API resource language in it, I'm also pretty interested there. So Tony, I'll ping you on Slack and ask you a million questions and bother you until you tell me to stop.
Oh, okay, sure.
Thanks.
If you guys are looking for background on federated API resources, Paul Morey is doing a lot of work with that now from the service catalog side. Cool.
That's where I'm coming from too.
Oh, awesome. All right. So I guess that's it for this meeting. And I guess, let's see, next week, we're not meeting next week, right?
Yeah, that's right. I'm not sure about January. You guys have a meeting at the first week, or let it just keep for the second week of January?
Whatever is currently scheduled at. This seems good to me.
Okay. Yeah, I'll just keep let me actually check when is the next one. So no meeting next week, and then we have one for January 4th, the first week of January. If that works for you guys, it's okay for me.
Yeah, that's okay.
Cool. Sounds good to me too. All right. Well, everyone enjoy your holidays, and I'll see y'all later.
Yeah,
And for you guys, great job. Thank you.
Okay.